Hi, John. Thanks for the video response. Yeah, I agree with you completely that we're not a Judeo-Christian country in the sense of our founding concepts. Yeah, by majority, as you pointed out, that was a real great way to put it. That maybe by majority, the individuals believe in Judaism or Christianity, Judeo-Christian thought. Um, so maybe by majority, but the foundational concepts are, I think, from I agree, from free thinking. You know, my understanding was those guys, the founding fathers, um, were yeah, some were Masons, but I think the main religious kind of belief they had was what they called deism. They believed, most of them, I think, believed in a God, a sort of a creator God who created the universe and then just left it alone. And I guess then the Newtonian physics would take over. But deism didn't believe in a God who was present and would personally intervene uh, in the workings of man or the workings of universe. He was basically a hands off God. You know, so they didn't believe in personal intervention, or I assume that means they wouldn't believe in prayer. You know, but I don't know all that much about it either. I just heard that they were deists. You know. Um, yeah, and that's consistent. Hey, the pentacle, or the pentagram, which is it? The pentacle. Um, that's a really great symbol. I know what the Wiccans believe is that it's five pointed with the top star facing up. Um, the top star represents spirit, and the other 4 points, the top point, I mean, represents spirit, and the other 4 points represent the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. So when you have a point at the top, it means that spirit is above, or is basically ruling the earthly side of man's nature, the four elements. If you flip it over, where the point is facing down, what it means then is that your spirit and your consciousness is subjugated to the four elements. So then that makes you, a slave to your baser nature, and a slave to all the elements. So that's what I heard. So that's why you want to keep that thing pointing up. Um, yeah, and I guess that symbol does occur a lot of places. Um, yeah, that's interesting. Hey, what else did you say? I got notes over here. Um, yeah, stories. I think it's fine to call all those things stories. They're stories. I mean, even our word history has the word story in it. I think of a story as anything that says, well, you know, um, there was a guy and this is what happened to him, and so those are stories. I think people, yeah, but I know what you mean. People will sort of think that you're invalidating it and saying it's just a story. Um, but I don't know if there's a better word for it. I mean, I don't know if there's a better word for it. I don't know. Um, People will get upset if you call it a myth because, um, the way we use the word myth now is we try to, there's a connotation that if it's a myth, it's unreal. Kind of like there's science and everything else a myth. But actually, I think it's probably more proper to call them myths. I took a great class in mythology. God, this guy who taught the class, I guess he studied mythology and Homer um, at Princeton. He studied the classics, and he was teaching this mythology class. And he's a really interesting guy, really interesting and funny, and kind of quirky. And the first day in class, he got up, and there were all of us in class. Was an adult class, and he said, "Okay, well, so how many of you believe that your life is run by myths?" And like really nobody raised their hand. He said, "So you guys all believe that myths are something that mankind used to believe, but we no longer believe those, and we don't go by myths anymore." And everybody said, "Yeah, I didn't because I like reading mythology." And maybe a couple other people didn't. But anyway, he said, "Okay, well, I'll show you." He pulled a dollar bill out of his pocket and he just lit it on fire. And you should have seen the reaction of the class when he lit that dollar bill on fire. fire. People, there was this kind of like this anxiety that came up, and a little bit of panic. And one person said, "Wait a minute, you can't do that. That's illegal to do that. That's not your property." Another person said, "Wait a minute, you've just taken a dollar out of circulation, and if everybody did that, the value of the dollar would be affected by that." And another person said, "Oh, how could you burn? There's an image of the president on there. The Washington. There's a portrait of Washington on there. How could you burn that?" And just one, two, three, everybody was going through anxiety. So that he proved his point. He said, "Now you see, it's just a piece of paper with some ink on it, right? But for some reason, we've invested it with all kinds of meanings and all kinds of beliefs." So yeah, our minds do run by myths. It's kind of hard to see when you have them all the time. I mean, it's hard to become aware of them. So I thought I wanted to tell you that. Um, um, yeah, but going back to your original point, yeah, the founding concepts of this country are free thinking concepts. I think I agree with you. They're not Judeo-Christian concepts. Um, we have the separation of church and state in the, I've never read the Federalist Papers. I got to read those. Those are supposed to be just great. And some British guy got on my case and said, "You're an American. You should read those Federalist Papers. You should be ashamed if you haven't read them." And I've never read them, but I guess that's where they had all the debates, or they document all the debates that went on and when they framed the Constitution. And the separation of church and state is right in there. So yeah, that's one thing I got to do is read that. Um, I think it all goes back to free thinking. I think kind of goes back to Descartes, where he tried to place everything in doubt, and he eventually got just to the point where he just said that the only thing he couldn't doubt was the fact that he was doubting. You know, and that gave him a place to start. And then he worked on from there. But that's radical. That's radical to take your to take everything you believe apart to that degree. I mean, he just did it rationally, and came to that conclusion. Taking beliefs apart one by one is probably a tremendous exercise, but man, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard, but yeah, I think it's worthy to try. I try to look at my beliefs and examine them, kind of do an inventory, as one guy said I saw in his video. Um, what else? Oh, so yeah, I agree. We're not Judeo-Christian, and I heard one. I think it was a senator get up, or somebody got up at one point. He was sort of irritated with the sort of uh, religious politics that have been going on, and how a lot of the politicians, are just pushing a religious agenda. And he said, "Hey, look, when you swear to an office in this country, you put your hand on a Bible, maybe another book, but you put your hand on the Bible and you swear to uphold the Constitution. You don't put your hand on the Constitution and swear to uphold the Bible." And I thought that was just a great, succinct way to phrase the whole thing. It was just great. Oh, I'm running out of time, man. I only got a couple minutes left. So how do we become freer thinkers or more free thinkers? I don't know. I think by questioning our assumptions, YouTube, I think, is real good for that for me, because I'll meet people who believe things radically different than myself, and I'll have to stop and think, process it and think, well, why do I believe what I believe? Um, some things, though, I don't down either. I just read a great book called Uncertainty by Ludwig Wittgenstein. A small little book, and only half of it's in English. There's German on one side and English on the other, so it's pretty quick to read. And he talks about how, we blur the meaning of words together. He doesn't really, I'm paraphrasing this real badly, but, we have the word know and the word believe and the word think, and we blur them all together. They sometimes have overlapping meanings, but it makes it really hard to think clearly. What's the difference between a belief, knowledge, opinion, and certainty, and probability? It's hard. So to tell them really apart. I mean, some things I believe because I feel like I know them. Other things I think I believe because it's rational to believe so, or I've arrived there by argument. But where does knowledge drop off and belief begin? It's hard to tell because we use the same terms to overlap. Hey, I'm running out of time. Thanks again for your video. I really enjoyed it. I like listening to your videos, and I could go on like that for a long time, but I only got a few seconds left. So thanks, John. I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.